So welcome back to the Pt.4 channel. This is going to be part 4 of the 1988 Yamaha DT125 or DT125R motor strip down, and I've got a new toy to play with which I'm going to get straight into right now. This was rather hard to set up, but what it is a dial test indicator gauge, and I've got it on a mag mount, and it's mag mounted to the vise. It's quite a stable place to mount it. And what I'm investigating is the this crankshaft end play that I seem to notice, which you can hear. So it doesn't really matter where the needle is on the dial at the moment, but when I lift the crankshaft, that's the kind of level of play that I'm getting, which isn't very clear. It was quite hard to set this up because of the crankshaft is there we go. So at the moment we could see that it says 44, and when I lift it up it goes right down to 35. So the difference is sort of 10 units, 9 units let's say. But I mean, if I force it, it can go a bit further. I mean, so there's, yeah, I mean it's more like, it's more like 10 easily. Well, 10, 11, 12, 13. So 13 of those units. Now if I move the conrod into a different position, say at the bottom of the stroke, so the crankshaft is now in a different position, and I move it, you get a different result, perhaps. That's the investigation. It's difficult to see that some about fucking shaky hand. So I've set up this dial indicator again. It's still going to be out of focus. That's on 35. I don't know why it's always out of focus, this camera. Alright, so that's on like 25. If I gently rotate the crankshaft around, it goes from 25, goes all over the place, but it's supposed to do it's end float. You're allowed to have end float, and it seems to deviate 1, 2, up to about 3. Just probably a bit clingy or something. You're allowed to have a little bit of end float, and I just worked out look at the focus factor. There's nothing I can do about that. The camera's just got, it's got autofocus preoccupations with other ideas. Just thinks I want to focus on something else. So rotating the crankshaft around there from 25, actually trying to get a good idea. Don't want to go up too much because that gives you a big deviation. So to be honest, I don't think there's anything wrong with the crankshaft itself. It seems to be quite straight. You can have it within 5 or 6 of those. What I am worried about is the fact that if you lift the crank up in one place, it will deviate a lot. I mean, not putting any pressure on that, I'm just touching it. And that's 7. It's going from 24 to 7. If I press it hard, it will go, oh shit, I just hit it with my thumb. If I remove this dial test indicator now, you can have a better look at it, at what you was looking at. It's upside down. It's only a cheap Chinese one, it's been dropped as well. So each one of the increments looks like it's 0.01 of a millimetre. So to get a better idea, each one of those increments is 0.01 and I was moving 15 of them. That can't be right, can it? Because it looks like hardly anything. That's what you get for using a Chinese thing. Well, it does look quite a lot when you hold it up at that angle, doesn't it? You can certainly get a lot of daylight through there. And that's 14. Yeah. So if I just, well, it says it's 5.5 thousandths of an inch. Well, I thought it was a bit more than 5.5 thousandths of an inch, or whatever that is in metric. 15 microns. Is that right? 15 microns, I wonder. 0.15 of a millimetre anyway. So the next thing to do with the disassembly is this is an oil baffle, and this is on the crankshaft. This is the primary gear, but I need to remove this oil baffle. And I was looking earlier, and I find it hard to believe that this motor cannot have been apart in its 30 years of existence. It's actually 31 years. So, but that's the way it looks, because the lack of wear on these washers just indicates that the lock washers have either new, replaced, or they've never been taken off before. And if they've never been taken off before, it means that this thing's never been apart, and it's 30 years, so it probably is about time to change some of the seals. Anyway, so just to note, this has got a little mark here on the drive gear of the balance shaft, and this driven gear of the balance shaft has got a little mark. And when you put it back together, it's a good idea if they line up. And I think it's hard to screw it up really, because they're all held in with wood rough keys. Anyway, it's just something to remember. You can see those marks, and you do know what they are. The drive shaft has got holes in it. The driven wheel hasn't. Hasn't got holes in it. And but anyway, before we go on, we're going to just take this baffle off, so that when we do take things off, like the primary drive, we can just slide them off. Anyway, before we take the primary drive off, we're supposed to undo this lock nut, and we'll be doing that by holding down the crank in the way I showed earlier. So before I went any further, or before I'm going any further, disassembling this motor, I was looking at the lock washer that I took off yesterday, and I noticed that it was a brand new one. And before I take this oil baffle off, I was just looking to see if the screw had ever come off before, and there's just a bit of wear in the bottom corner there. But I was thinking about it, and there was wear there and a stress mark up there. But you'd only put those stress marks on it if you were doing it up. And so strangely, if this has only ever been done up before, it means that this has never been taken apart in 30 years. This motor has been owned by several people who would have thrashed the life out of it, I should imagine. And I think this gear bearing, it says Koyo, and I think that's the Yamaha stock factory bearing, Koyo, that brand. So it is amazing that this motor wouldn't have come apart in all that time. 30 years for a two-stroke. And I think there's no idea what the mileage was, because the clocks were broken when I received it. I think they were broken on 29,000 miles, but who knows whether they were even the right clocks. because they weren't attached to the bike and they were broken. So the clocks that come with it said 29,000 miles, which is not bad for a two-stroke. But that oil baffle has to come off, and it looks like it's only ever been done up before. I'm going to try and get my silly Samsung to actually focus on that. You know, because you would only ever stress a nut out on the right hand side if you were doing it up. I mean, it would show stress on the other side if you were undoing it. Anyway, I'm going to take it off and see if I mess that nut up, screw up, which I usually do. For this I'll be using the old, the not so old impact driver. So like I say, at this point I want to start taking off the oil baffle plate, and that is 1 mark for left and 2 marks for right, because I want to put those screws back where they came from. Now the specified torque rating for these is 5.8 foot-pounds, which is 10% of the force required to do up the flywheel generator wheel. So thinking these shouldn't be too tight, although if someone's, you know, marked the screw doing them up, they might actually be in there pretty tight. Have to wait and see. First thing is to identify the size. They look like PH3 to me. And I'm not sure, but the PH3 in the impact driver kit is different to the PH3 in another screwdriver kit I've got. So that's, when I say a PH3, I mean my impact driver PH3. It's not really brilliant. Well, it's certainly not a PZ3. I've got a PH3 from my screwdriver set, and 5.8 is the specified torque. Need a 6mm spanner for that. Right, let's see if that fits in there. Oops, haven't used this for a while. Well, I would say that's over. I'm putting in quite a lot of force there, and I reckon that someone's put a thread lock on that right from the word go. So I don't recommend you do this, especially with a nylon tachometer gear in place, but I've got no alternative if there's thread lock in there. Just got to give it a bit of a tickle, really. Have to do the other one as well. Found a burning. Could have been a thread lock disintegrating. It might be something else. What can you say? I mean, if that's the way it is, there's nothing I could do about it. Oops. No. Oh, hey up. Blimey. It's a lot stronger than 5.8. Right, that one's okay. That was about 5.8. This one, it seems a little bit more stuck. Maybe I should have given this a little bit more. Alright, thank you. That's about 5.8. What I was just turning it on there. Hang on, I seem to have broken my ratchet. That's typical, isn't it? That's what you get for a poundland ratchet. Oh, I can't get it in. Oh, that was a bit of a flipping nightmare. Right, it's going to be a bit harder to clean these than I thought, because I've just marked them left and right because I wanted to put them back in the same hole. Yeah, I didn't use too much heat there, but if you were here, you could just hear sort of crackling noise, and it sounded to me like there was some like thread lock melting. And right, well, I'll get back to that. It's been ages just to get the baffle plate off. So we got the baffle out of the way. So while I'm here, I'm actually going to take out this nylon part of the tachometer. And I know there's a thrust washer behind this, and that's got to come out too, otherwise it can fall out. Actually, it don't look like it can come out until the horizontal part of the tachometer's out. Maybe if it rotates it will spit it out. It's driven off the clutch. Right, well, that's one of the reasons you could leave that in there. But actually, because I want to knock this washer back, I wanted to get rid of that. Right, well, I'll give that a clean and just put it in a safe place. Balancer shaft, lock washer, peel back, take 1. Might have to go into take 2 faster than I thought. That's my crankshaft lock kit going flying. It's time to reuse that little screwdriver. There's a big old iron filing. That's the trouble with those. And goes the rest of that crankshaft lock kit. It does seem a bit strange to lay into engine components with a hammer and chisel. Goes the crank lock kit. Oh, that's a lock washer that's really locked. dBing. Sorry about that, getting carried away. Oops. Oh, for goodness sakes. Can't they come up with something a little bit more, less out of Fred Flintstones and more in keeping with proper technology? I suppose this is proper technology really. If you want to lock a washer, you've got to use a lock washer. I want a digital lock washer, you know, a digital lock washer. Fucking full of shit, ain't I? Fucking thing. Sorry about that. I'm well carried away with the French. Right, going on holiday. Right, not getting very far again. Now we're getting somewhere. There's a little bit of spring action in the washer, which means you can open it, but it will close again. We can remove the crank lock situation now. I can turn that round. And you can see there's a spring action in the washer, so I'm opening it and it's closing again. It's time to get a thicker screwdriver, obviously. Oh, I love this screwdriver as well. I'm in love with the screwdriver. How strange. Well, you know how it is if you've got your favourite tool and you've got someone asks you to hit it with a hammer. What are you supposed to think? Don't want to be doing this. I'd rather be riding. Would I rather be riding than doing this? Maybe this intermediate size one will be better. Wow. Say it isn't. It's no better. Shit. That's why you should use a crankshaft locking tool. Bloody blimey, innit? Bloody blimey. Seems like a brilliant way to smash your gears up. That's what it seems like to me. I wonder if there's a special tool that does this. The annoying thing is, there's a sort of elasticity in the lock washer, and every time you open it, it springs it shut again. I suppose you could just grind these off and get new ones. That'd be a quick way to do it. I mean, at the end of the day, you probably want to get new ones anyway. Alright, let's see if we can see anything clearer. Looks to me like you want to get some sort of chisel there. Just keep knocking it. What I used to want to do with that. Flat punch. I wonder if that'll fit in there. That's the best thing to use on one of these things. Always known that. If you know how to hold one. this one's definitely harder than the other one. This lock washer is harder than the first lock washer we encountered. And that was the clutch centre nut, obviously. Yeah, so this is tougher than the clutch centre nut. Got people looking at me, you're hitting your fucking engine with a hammer. Tell me about it. What are you hitting it with a hammer for? That's not very accurate. You don't hit stuff, you don't hit your engine with a hammer. You don't hit your motor with a hammer to get it going. Oh, tell me about it. Just tell me about it. You know what I mean? Well, just feel lucky that that ain't your engine that I'm doing this to, because I feel real bad about this. Well, this is certainly how not to do a fucking lock washer. If you want to know how not to do something, how not to do a lock washer on the Pt.4 channel. Okay, this is it. Fuck's sake. Well, the kickstart's fallen out. That's a good start. Even give me a bit of a shock. It's really not helping itself. Wow. Let's get this in there. I don't know whether you can see, so I'm going to use a magnifier to help. I just want to hit it square there with a punch, flat punch, but just doesn't seem to be able to get one in there. Yeah, just put a screwdriver in there and lever it open. Screwdriver, lever it open. Don't even need to hit it. Yep, graduate your screwdrivers. Up she goes. Bloody hell. This is all fucking pants as well now. Yep, don't like steel against steel. Don't like that. Right, so using my favourite screwdriver. started to push that tab down. It looks like an open mouth now. Well, that is one hard lock washer, that's what I do know. I don't know whether it's because I'm just worried that these teeth are intermeshed and hitting it with a hammer is gonna... Fuck's sake! You know, or whether it's just me, I'm feeling a bit of a pussy today, you know? So the torque on this is 40 foot-pounds, and seem to have tapped away the lock washer enough. This driven gear nut, this is the driven gear, that's the nut, 40 foot-pounds should undo. Oops, if I haven't smashed it to bits already. Okay, so the balance shaft lock washer has been pushed out of the way. It's a 22mm socket, fits on there pretty good. It's 40 foot-pounds. Seemed a bit less than 40 foot-pound, although I did have fairly large extension on. Well, I did manage to tap the lock washer out of the way enough then. It seemed to take for ages. Kickstart fell out. You can see where it walked along. It walked along with the rhythm of the tapping. Tap, 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 and fell out. Which, you know, I mean, what was I supposed to do? Bend it back with my thumbnail? It seems really illogical to have a lock washer like that with that spec on here with these cogs, you know, but there you go. If that's the spec that came out of the factory, what can we say? It's absolute. It's a bit of a sandwiched one now. I'll be looking to get new lock washers, I think. Maybe that's why it looks so new, that everyone who does this has to use a new lock washer. So having spent an hour tapping that back and finally removing the driven balance shaft wheel, or gear, sorry, the balance shaft gear, we're ready to undo the primary drive nut, which has a torque of 58 foot-pounds and is a 19mm. So I've blocked the crankshaft with the old screwdriver that I showed earlier, and oops, it might have to go around a cycle actually. Yeah, it has. They come off there. Right, it comes off to about here. Starts to bite into the wood. I'm just worried that the drive shaft there, the gear shaft, clutch shaft, the shaft there might just be in the way. Anyway, 58 foot-pound, shouldn't go flying. Oh, crikey, 58 foot-pound really is something. This is when you haven't got a lot to hold on to. You know what I mean? I'll tell you what, actually, if I get a piece of wood, really starting to fight now. I mean, an hour on that washer. It's quite a fight. Trying to wedge this piece of wood to the back of the motor there. Got an extension bar on a 19mm socket. I've blocked the crankshaft with a thing, screwdriver and some wood. Now hopefully we can apply the force in the correct way. Trying to roll it forward. Nope. That's rather difficult, just trying to drive it forwards. You don't like the idea of things slipping. Stuff that slips can be dangerous, you know. Got the wrong gloves on as well. I'm going to just go and up my gloves. Well, I didn't want to do a thing. Just wanted to bend it up. Okay, having a lot of difficulty with the primary drive nut. The engine wobbling around on the bench, as this is 58 foot-pound torque. So I've mounted the motor back in the frame with the front and the rear. The rear's not fully in, but it's in, should be in far enough. I'm just going to lock the crank down and see if it will loosen up. So just put the pieces of wood in position to lock the crank there. Got my 19mm socket and an extension bar. Put it over the... oh, this has probably got to go around a full cycle actually. Okay, now we're biting. We were biting, except the socket's in the wrong place to get a good bite for me. Okay, here we go. Let's just get that bit of wood straight. There's no point in making life hard for yourself later on. Okay, 58 foot-pound. Make you jump, don't it? Probably a crap socket. Right, well there's the primary drive nut. Now before I take it off actually, I'm going to put it back on the bench. Okay, I should have known that tip actually, because it just took a minute to put it back in the frame like that. Whoops. In fact, I'll leave the camera running while I take it out, I think, because if I it's just put it in the wrong way to get these nuts off. So, yeah, nice shot at the back of my head, taking the engine mount nut off. Engine mount number one. Actually, I've got to keep that because I want to keep it with this bolt. So it's just the front mount and the back mount got to put it on. Okay then. Yeah, getting a bit cramped in here. I wasn't expecting to have to do that. If I was actually preparing, like if I was prepared to put it back in the frame it would have been slightly different. Right, here we are then. Should have an empty container around here. Primary drive nut. There's actually only one way that can go, it's a flange nut. Right, I can scale down the gloves back onto the neoprene nitrile, back onto the nitrile gloves. Bit of a thin one. That was a faff. An hour on that lock nut, and then about 30 minutes before I thought, let's put this back in the frame because it's going to be a lot quicker. And there's that washer. Now I will mark this one. That's the primary nut washer. Let's hope I've remembered my Sharpie marker, otherwise I'll spend about half an hour looking for that. Blooming heck, I tell you what, this ain't a weekend job, you know. I've got to wait for some stuff to arrive in the post anyway. So there's the primary drive pinion, and if it ain't buggered now, it probably is. Right, it's been such a long-winded faff that I've run out of battery on the main camera. I just took the wood rough out of there and I've marked that with a cross so that I get it the right way up. I took this out as the battery ran out. I've forgotten which way around it goes. One side is dished and the other side isn't, so it's not going to be too hard to work it out from the previous pictures anyway. So here's the balancer drive gear. It should just pull off here. Balancer drive gear. Looks like there's a spacer there. It's quite a big old spacer with quite a lot of wear on it as well. And there's there a thrust washer. Anyway, so I'll just mark this up with a few little arrows on there. So I can do that probably one-handed. And the reason, of course, you see me put a hole, actually I can't open a Sharpie one-handed, that's a bit of a bugger. Right, I'll edit that. So the reason you see me put more than one mark on these sometimes is because I sometimes don't clean these, and if you hit a bit of oil with your Sharpie it just comes off. So having a quick glance in there, some sludge. I'm in a hurry now because this has taken 2 hours just to do these two gears, which is, you know, it's been a bit of a flipping faff to be honest. Now there should be a wood rough here. This is me balancer driven gear. Remembering the little timing mark there. Someone's actually engraved that with an F, which is interesting. Anyway, I'm putting that in a separate box actually with all the balancer gear stuff. Now there's the little wood rough. There's a little wood rough there. That's for the balancer shaft. That's actually quite easy to recognise that it went that way up. Let's see if I can zoom in on that. Yeah, it's got some sort of rusty crud on it. Anyway, that go in the balance shaft box. Well, bearing for the balancer shaft. There's some more crankshaft. Doesn't feel so bad that side. Anyway, that's going to be it for today. Thanks for watching. It's been a nightmare. I think I'll start again. Right, that's going to be it for today. It's been a right flipping nightmare. And hopefully, you know, this will just get a bit easier now. Actually, I just had to introduce this final appendage because looking at this under close scrutiny, you can see inside that the right hand crankshaft oil seal has actually failed, because there's the spring of it hanging down, and all this perished, well, it's not really perished because you can still read most of the writing, but that oil seal is like there it is hanging in there, so no wonder there's a bit of movement. and no wonder it won't start and it sounds awful. Look, there's the, actually look at that, the way if you rotate, let me rotate the crankshaft, you can see the flipping, the grippy bit of the oil seal is totally rotating with it. Dear oh dear. So anyway, I was right to take it apart this level then.